This is the Mediate Now with Winter Wheeler. Your clear choice for expert mediation and negotiation advice. But it's so much more than that. Take our advice, you will improve your entire life. Are you ready? Let's get to it. Hello, and thank you everybody for listening today. Today, my guest is Karrie Brazaski. She's the founder of Redwood Executive Coaching and the nonprofit Helping Healthcare Heroes. She has over 25 years of corporate healthcare experience, but ended it all 5 years ago due to severe burnout. Today, she facilitates and provides emotional well-being and burnout recovery programs for busy professionals and their children around the world, and provides help to organizations in creating sustainable cultures. Now, if that is not like a meaningful message and mission, I don't know what is. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So when we first met, and I think I probably say this, whoops. I think I probably say this on every episode of this show. We met on LinkedIn.
We did.
Yes, we met on LinkedIn. We had a call. I thought that you were phenomenal, our present tense, phenomenal. And I wanted to get your message out to more people. And I think it really resonated with me because I am burnt out, trying my hardest to claw out of it. And I'm having a very, very, very hard time. And so I love your title. I love this.
Oh, thank you.
You know, Burnout Recovery Strategist. That is so cool.
Well, because most of us need we all have things that we know that we can do, but you really got to have a strategy and you got to put the plan together, because knowing various tools don't do us very good unless they're of no use unless we actually implement it. And when we have a plan. The other thing is I find so many people get so down in the weeds, they can't see out of it. And so it's we can create a strategy and really get you out of this fairly quickly so that you can feel good about yourself and feel like I'm enjoying my life again instead of just treading water with my nose just above the waterline.
So I need you to help me. And like most of my listeners, I'm a mom. I have a full-time career. I can't stop volunteering for things. And I have this feeling that I want to help everybody and I want to do the best that I can. I want to give 150% all the time. And I know that is impossible, but I just keep trying. And I hope you don't laugh at this, but what I've tried to do is take 2 hours a day to just focus on myself, to exercise, to meditate. This is all very new. I'm not that evolved, I promise. But that's what I've been trying to do. And I started off really strongly, scheduling that time in the morning, blocking it off on my calendar so nobody could hit me up with a Calendly, right? And then I started to think, I'm not helping enough people. I'm spending all this time by myself. So I'm not helping anyone, that I'm meeting. I'm not helping my clients at this time of the day. And I'm also not spending that time with my children. And then I started to feel bad. And it's just this cycle that perpetuates.
Oh my gosh.
And, and I left the law firm life for a number of reasons, but one of them was I wanted to have a better work-life balance. I wanted to be more involved with my kids. Now, listen, I said all of that pre-pandemic, this whole 24/7 with everybody in the house. I wasn't counting on that, but I did want to spend more time with them. And now it's almost like I spend even less time with them.
Well, one of the things that we have to be able, you say I'm not helping enough people, but what if one of those people was actually you? And so instead of looking at it as I have to help all these people, I'm one of those people I have to help.
Oh my God.
It kind of reframes the way you think about it, doesn't it?
It entirely reframes the way I think about it.
So if you can be on the list of people that you're helping, then it's not, I'm taking away from anybody else because I'm still helping. Because we cannot serve from an empty vessel. We've all heard it many times. You know, we've been on airplanes, they said, put the oxygen on you before you do your children. Well, what good is all of this helping everybody else if it's at the expense of you? If it's at the expense of your just well-being, your state of mind, your health. The other thing is you said, I black out 2 hours. That's a pretty big chunk of time.
It is.
And so the time allotment might just be too much. And so back it down. Maybe you only need an hour. And the other thing is people will go, well, I have to exercise. I have to do journaling. I have to meditate. It's this have to. Well, what if you just did nothing? Like I encourage people to create white space in their day, which you still have to kind of block it out so that you have it. But remember when you were a little kid at school and maybe like my name was Webster, my maiden name. So I was the back of the class by the windows and Wheeler. So you were right there with me, so we were in the back, we were closest to the windows. And so you would find yourself and I'm sure every little kid does it, even my friend Albertsons that were in the front. But they just kind of daydream out the window. And they probably like you were kind of daydreaming. And then you heard this winter. And then it maybe got a little, or somebody like kicked your desk and you're like, what?
Like,
you were totally enamored with whatever outside the window. That's our body's like innate need to just decrease the stimuli, pull us back. And daydreaming just allows us to kind of reset. When we get into adulthood, we forget to do that. Like if you think about like the times where you really had a lot of fun or you're with your kids, you're so in the moment and every once in a while, maybe you're at a park and you just start swinging them back and forth and you're kind of swinging them, but you went into another place. And then you're like, oh, I'm swinging my kids back and forth.
Yeah.
That's our body just kind of saying, okay, we need to reset. And so we need to kind of create those little bits where we can reset. And so sometimes that 2 hours is too much. The other is that if exercise becomes one more thing on my to-do, or the journaling becomes one more thing, and the I have to create this time, it's one more thing. It's not helping you de-stress and relax because it's becoming one more thing. So make you a priority that you're going to help, but maybe create smaller chunks of time. And you know what? Today I feel like journaling and maybe I want to spend the whole 45 minutes doing that and I don't work out. So, all right, you know what? After I get done with the day, let me grab the kids and we're going to walk down to the park. I don't know. I live close to a park, so, you go and you do something different. Our moving our body doesn't always have to be, our heart rate at 180 and we're sweating and then we have to take a shower and change our clothes and everything else. It could simply just be moving because sometimes when we get super stressed, when we exercise at a high rate, it actually increases our stress hormones. So like if you exercise and then you're like, oh my God,
lies.
I'm exhausted.
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's because your body, you don't have enough reserves. Now, some people, it's absolutely like that is their way to burn off extra energy. But for a lot of women who are this go, until you get to the point where you kind of have a little bit of reserves, that workout just depleted you of everything. So like if you work out and you don't have energy afterwards and you don't feel like, and you just are kind of plugging through the day, it's a good chance that you need to back off. And so some things that you could do, walking, yoga, more gentle things versus pounding it out on a treadmill or the stair stepper or whatever. it's listen to your body, because it does actually increase the hormones in your body when you have that real vigorous workout.
And I will freely admit that I am neurotic.
Most of us are.
And obsessive compulsive. And I am just the craziest overachiever you might ever meet in your life. So when I got my Peloton and my Peloton app and I've got all this stuff, I was like, I love it. And I went full on, right? And I still love it. I think it's one of the coolest, and they don't pay me. I wish they did. But I think it's one of the coolest programs that I've ever used for fitness. But I am definitely very, very focused on making sure I get that little blue dot on the calendar that says I worked out. So it became another thing I had to do. It went from something that I was really enjoying and wanting to do for 2 hours in the morning before my kids got up, because that's the only time it's ever quiet in my house, to, oh my goodness, I'm tired today and I really don't want to do this, but I got to get that blue dot. I can't just not do it.
Yeah. So you have to decide, is the blue dot giving you something in your body that you need? Or is it one more thing and dragging you down? If it is, maybe you need a few days with no blue dots. And I know that seems counterintuitive to what most people tell you, because they'll be like, you have to exercise, you have to move your body, you have to this. I'm just saying, I'm not saying do nothing. I'm just saying you might need to pull back a little bit. So we have this, you have to slow down to speed up. So you cannot drive your car while getting an oil change. Can't do it.
Right.
You got to stop.
Literally can't.
You got to, you drive in, they lift you up, or else they've got the, underneath, but your car has to be turned off and stopped. So every once in a while, we have to turn off and totally stop so that we can recharge. Now, one of the best ways that you can do that is making sure that you get sleep, and making sleep a priority. And so many moms, just so many people in general, I hear, oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I don't have time for that. I'll sleep when I'm dead. Well, let me tell you, if you don't make sleep a priority, you're going to be dead sooner than you think. And a lot of people say, well, it's just very melodramatic. But they actually had some studies that came out, I think it was this last summer, and all-cause mortality, meaning it doesn't matter what disease, why you die. If you sleep less than 6 hours a night, your rate of death is higher, statistically higher, than people who get 7 to 9 hours, which is recommended.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Sleep is one of the things that you can use. And it's an amazing stress reduction tool that we all have in our arsenal. We all know how to do it. Some of us do it better than others, but you have to make sleep a priority. Like, you probably have a bedtime for your kids, because you still have little kids.
I do.
And you have nap times for your kids, don't you?
I do.
And when you get off that, you're like, oh my gosh, you look at your husband and you're like, oh, we can't do this again. They've got to have naps. They've got to eat. They've got, we're like fanatical about making sure that our kids get good sleep. Well, guess what? Just because our bodies are bigger doesn't mean that our sleep requirement goes away. Now, the amount of sleep that we need is not as high. Little kids are getting, 12 and 14 hours of sleep, but we still need it. Our body rejuvenates itself. And if you think about, when you get a sore throat and the glands swell up and you're like, oh, it just hurts. I can barely swallow. It's so swollen in there. You go to the doctor, they'll even feel on the outside. Well, so if you think about that swollen gland, that's kind of what happens in your head, in your brain every day, is that the toxins and everything that go through our system swell our brain cells. And it's kind of like that, we want big brain cells. Well, not when we want it, not from inflammation. So at night, what happens is we go through a cycle where it cleans that all out, and then our cells are able to go back to their regular size. So if you think about sleep as kind of this internal wash machine, it just washes everything clean and cleans out all of that we've had to kind of get you ready to go for the next day. So we really need that rejuvenation time in our sleep. Now, when you meditate, meditating is a fabulous tool to also use for stress reduction, because when you meditate, it actually, so we have an amygdala in the center of our brain. You'll hear people call it the reptilian brain, that old brain that we have. It controls our fight or flight, that like friend, foe. I always say our brain is there to say friend, foe, keep you safe. It's like, is this a friend or a foe? Keep you safe. And so that's what it's constantly doing. But when you meditate with overstressed, chronic stress people, their amygdala is kind of shriveled. It's tighter. And when you meditate, you're able to improve the size of your amygdala so that it functions better. Not everything looks like a foe. The other thing that it does is it actually increases gray matter. And a lot of the early studies, when they did with meditation, it was these gurus, and, they've been doing it for years. And yes, they had this, but there was a study that came out probably in the last year that actually looked at people who had never meditated before. And they had them in a 6-week program. They meditated. They wanted them to meditate for 30 to 45 minutes. The average was 19, because who has 45 minutes? Nobody. And so around 19, 20 minutes. And in 6 weeks, they were able to see improved gray matter, improved overall, just happiness and joy in their lives, less reactivity. And so what I tell people, especially when you have kids, is find something where you can kind of create a meditative state. And you don't have to like go and, like some people think for meditation.
Right.
You can do guided meditation. You could just be quiet. The thing that's fun with little kids is at the end of the day, like when you kind of are, we're closing down for the day, shutting down shop, getting into total mom mode, but we got to do dinner. Everybody's kind of cranky because they're hungry, is just take 5 minutes where you all come together, light a candle. Kids think that's the coolest thing. And you put it on the floor, because we never have candles on the floor. So it's even cooler for a kid, the smaller they are.
It's like,
and
you just, danger.
They just sit crisscross their legs, sit there, and just see if you guys can just be quiet and still for 5 minutes. But you're doing it as a family where you're teaching everybody to just, let's have this quiet time, this slow down time. And then it's like, okay, now we can go be our wiggly willies. And it's amazing how just that little bit of time where you have disconnected from the workday, you're getting ready to go into family time, but everybody just slows down.
I love that. I'm writing that down.
Well, I said, I love my grandma, and the things that her generation did that we've lost, the ability to dance. I mean, some people still dance, but like dance with partners. And that was like a big deal to dance.
Oh yeah. I totally cannot do that.
Yeah. Learning to court and write letters, to your love. That's a lost art. And napping. Like my grandma, it was like, it didn't matter. You didn't have to go to sleep, but you had to lay down every afternoon for about 20 minutes. And, and I'm thinking about it, it's really what we needed. We needed just this quiet time, settle down. Most of us kids fell asleep. Sometimes we didn't though, but after 20 minutes, okay, now you can go about and do what you need. And so it's kind of bringing some of those things back into our lives to create some calm in the day.
I love that. I definitely need to be more strict about the quiet time and the nap times around here.
And I have friends who are like, my kids won't sleep. I said, then you just tell them, you know what? Here's some books. you can sit on your bed, but for the next 30 minutes, we're all just going to stay in our rooms. We're just going to be quiet. Now, I know not everybody, people are like, oh yeah, that'd be great. Not all kids will do that, but you'd be surprised once you kind of start a routine, how quickly kids can actually get into it.
I'll give it a whirl. I mean, I'm desperate over here.
Well, I will tell you. So we worked with a big IT company, helping their engineers kind of create some work-life balance, some strategies for busy families. One of the things that my business partner shared is a lot of us use like project management software, Asana, Slack, whatever. Well, as your kids get older, like if they're in kindergarten or above, they know how to use technology. And it's starting to put like some of their stuff in Slack or in Asana, where you say, you do this, or they have an iPad and you record for them. Okay, I want you to work, for little kids, maybe it's, I want you to go read a book with your sister. And then, I don't know, you have some other activity that you have them do, and they've kind of got their stuff there, and then stop the recording. They go do it. And when you're done with that, come back and listen to the video again. For moms to be able to get some work time uninterrupted. And so, when they're little, it might only be 15, 20 minutes, but then they come back. They love technology. They come back, they play the video, and you give them another task to do. You might be able to task them out for an hour, and as they get older, you task it out for longer. And they just come back, they hit it, brilliant. And you're teaching them to be able to do it themselves.
That is brilliant. Because I tell you, my kids, so I have 4. Yes, 4. They love their iPads and they love making videos, and they think that they're YouTube stars, or that mommy is stifling them from becoming YouTube stars, right? Because I won't let them use the internet. But that is a great idea. Giving them a task that they can videotape. They would love that. Like, oh, mom's interested in this all of a sudden.
Or like you have, like one of them's learning to read. And you say, you know what? I would love, your task today. I've got to go get on this call. And so what I want you to do is grab 2 books that you're working on and video yourself reading the books. And then when mom's done, I'll come and on the words that you stumbled on, or then we read it together, or, whatever it is. Oh my gosh, they're just like, oh, I can do that. Or you are doing the video where you're telling them to go do something, stop the video. They come back, play the video, they go do something else, come back and stop. So you can do it both ways.
Okay. I am absolutely trying that out, because I feel like I can't get more than 20 minutes for the most part, like to myself.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely someone who has to sit and like get immersed in what I'm doing. And 20 minutes is not long enough.
Yeah.
And then the
other one is to have a like good snacks drawer in your refrigerator. So like maybe you take one of your pull-out drawers and it's got, celery and carrots and apples, grapes, whatever it is that you would not care whether your kid had that or not at any time of the day. So that they then, if you're hungry or you need a drink of water, you can go get it. Like my son is 14 and he'll still sometimes come in and go, hey mom, can I drink blah, blah, blah? Yeah, go get it. Okay,
you don't have to involve me.
I just wanted to check, or, hey mom, I saw this in the fridge. Is it okay if I eat it? Yeah.
So good.
But if they know that, this is my little space, that if I get hungry, now some kids you have to kind of create some limits, but kids are, when food is plentiful, I believe, when food is plentiful and kids feel that they can come and go, they don't overdo it. Now, you're not going to put, Snickers and, Jolly Ranchers and all of that in there. You keep that as a treat. But by and large, a lot of the fruits and vegetables, put that to where they're already cut up, ready to go, and they can get it without you. So they could have a snack, or you teach them at, 10 o'clock, go get a snack. And so when the clock gets this time, then go get a snack.
So I just bought my 7-year-old because he asked. The older child has not asked. But I bought him an alarm clock.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because he was tired of waiting for someone to wake him up, or he was tired of waking up too late. He was not happy with how much time he had in the morning for some free time before school. And I was just so impressed. I was like, wow, he's trying to self-regulate, and he seems to understand that he needs this time in the morning to prepare for his day. And then, of course, mom guilt, because that's just a thing. I was like, oh, I've been depriving him of what he needed. But, he verbalized it. So
yeah,
we bought him an alarm clock.
Good is that you've created a child who can verbalize their needs. Because you probably have another kid who's like, you could wake them up 5 minutes before they got it and they're fine.
Yes, I have one of those.
Where they're like, why did you wake me up so early?
That's also how I function. Like,
yeah.
Like,
my husband's that way too. He wants, actually my son is that way too. He wants, to know that they're not going to be stressed, where I'm like, 20 minutes. Yeah, I could be up and ready and out the door in that amount of time. As I've gotten older, I do enjoy my quiet time in the morning, but if I don't have it, it doesn't stress me out by any stretch.
Yeah, when I was going into an office, I was fine with that, because I think it was because I also had that drive. It was like a 45-minute-hour drive.
Oh, wow.
I could decompress on the way. I would basically roll out of bed, grab my stuff, and go. It was not a big deal for me. But I love that my son has that and he knows it. And then, being on lockdown, the 2 hours that I'm trying to get, I find that I need that too. Since there's never, there's no distinction here between where I'm working, where I'm parenting, where I'm sleeping, where I'm being entertained, because it's all the same thing. It's so much easier to just be stressed out all the time. So my studio, I have this one up here. I have one in the basement. But I typically use the one that's literally in my bedroom. Not the best idea. I know that. But it was hard for me to be in my bedroom trying to relax, knowing that I could have been recording something. I could have been on LinkedIn. I could have been doing any amount of things that are productive, or at least in my mind are productive. A lot of it's probably busy work, but that's a different story, right? But, I think with the pandemic, it's gotten so much more difficult for people. Is that something that you're seeing kind of across the board with your clients?
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, I just had a chatting with somebody earlier today, and it doesn't matter where the space is, but have designated space so that you can kind of button it up at the end of the day and walk away. I prefer it not to be in the bedroom, only because you have to have some spot that's like yours, and you don't feel like when you're sitting there that it's calling you. If you can do the separation, great, but a lot of people can't. Like, it's like I have to separate it out. And so I encourage people at the end of the day to actually turn the computer off, to actually visually watch yourself kind of shed the stress of the day as you walk through the doorway, because I'm leaving work and I'm going to family. And because most people had, 20, 30 minute commutes and everything, right. Go for a walk around the block. Go, even if you don't have you're like, I got all these kids, I can't leave them. Walk to the end of the driveway and then come back in. so that there's some physical separation so that it's like, okay, I'm out of this mode. I can be here and feel like I've closed it for the day. And it's amazing because it's funny because I actually kind of just physically move myself throughout the day. And so I started actually getting up and going for a walk around the block. At like 4:30 in the afternoon, I get up and my husband's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, going for a walk. And I come back and he goes, well, that was an awful short walk. And I'm like, I was only gone 12 minutes and just went around the block. I just needed to like have that separation. And then I can come in and it's like, okay, now I can plan, what are we going to do for dinner? This and that. And then if I choose to come back and do some work, I can, but I've at least created some separation. And then it's a choice if I come back versus feeling like I'm dragged back in.
Oh, yeah.
But I also don't recommend 1 hour before you go to bed, just make sure there's no work. Like really create a separation there.
Oh, that's so hard.
I know. But the things that if you are one of those that really does it is make sure that there's a program I use like Folux where it dims the blue light on your computer. I have mine go on at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And it dims it down because it'll decrease the blue light. So it doesn't disrupt our sleep like the white light and the blue light do. The other is to do it on your phone. Because I actually went to a Kindle a couple of years ago and I actually do like reading before I go to bed, but then I'm reading on my phone versus reading a paperback. So I put that Folux on there. If you've got an Apple, you can do the Apple nighttime and it changes the color and it'll help so that it doesn't keep you awake. So those are some tips that you can do if you are somebody who uses that. But what you don't want is to be so ingrained in it that you can't turn your brain off.
Right, because that does nothing other than affect your sleep, your productivity.
Yeah. And then you just are laying there and you're going round and round and round. But I will tell you, if you have a hard time turning it off, a great technique to use, it's called 4-7-8 breathing, where you just take a breath in for a count of 4, hold it for 7, and then blow it out for 8. And you do probably 4 or 5 cycles of that, and you can go to sleep. Most people can go to sleep after that. If you get up in the middle of the night because you had to pee, it works really well for that. For people who have a hard time going back to sleep after they've gotten up, that 4-7-8 can help relax. And I tell people, try to shoot for 4 or 5. Most can't even remember how many they got and they went back to sleep.
I have written down so many tips as you've been talking. Now, in your professional life, when you're not just, helping people like me try to figure out some things, what's your typical client like?
So I do one-on-one work, which is typically women like you running a business, trying to, have it all. I always say we have this house of cards and our life looks grand from the outside, and inside we're like, oh, I just died. I'm crumbling. I don't know what to do. And busy leaders in organizations, those are the people that I do some one-on-one work with. But I also work in organizations where we go in and we help them create retention strategies, because I truly believe, like, here's a question for you. Oh, so not a complete sentence there, but
I'm good. I got it.
If your law job, when you're an attorney, if that job would have worked for you as much as you working for the job, would you have stayed?
Longer than I did, yes.
Yeah. So we have this thing of, well, turnover is just what it is. And, and we hear this all the time about millennials and Gen Zs, they just don't stay in jobs. They don't stay in jobs because the jobs aren't working for them. Your job needs to work for you as much as you work for the job. And so I believe that if we can create some balance in our lives. Now, some organizations, you're never going to have it. They don't value it. They want everybody working, 60 plus hours and, you're billing 50. And so you're there for 80. Those are not going to be work balance but those people need to be upfront. Like I talked to a company not long ago, and they said that all of their leaders are working 50 to 60 hours a week, but they have a lot of turnover. And I said, well, are you telling people when they come on as a leader that they're going to work 50 to 60? Well, no, because it's a 40-hour a week work. That's a 40-hour work week. Okay, but you just told me that everybody is working 50 to 60. I said, if you don't tell people what the expectation is and they are able to make an educated decision and an informed decision, they're going to get resentful. Because the reason that we go to work is because you need my knowledge, my brain, and X amount of time. In exchange for my knowledge and my time, you are giving me dollars and maybe some benefits and some other things. But there's a clear exchange there. If I start to feel like you are taking more than what was agreed upon, attorney, that's a breach of contract. You are taking more from me than what I agreed to. And so after a while, I'm going to start to feel really resentful. I may love my job, but I may love the work, but I'm starting to hate my job. I'm starting to resent my job. So we need to have those conversations. So those are some of the things that we help organizations with is let's have some clear communication. Let's really decide what we want to stand for and then help our people create work-life balance, be able to have some resilience tools, not burn out, and see if we can keep people here, as well as having conversations with leaders on how to have some performance. Because too many times we tell people how to do the job instead of showing them how to do the job. And so it's really creating that holistic, sustainable culture that we do when we work with organizations.
Yeah. So, the last job that I had, it was definitely some bait and switch happening. I was told it would be a lot of work. But they didn't, and as an attorney, I was like, I'm used to a lot of work. Like, that's not a problem. But they meant a lot of work, as in, we are severely understaffed. We can't keep anybody here. And your life is going to be a nightmare. And suddenly you're going to need narcotics to get through the day. Like, that was what was going on. And I started to kind of internalize that, like, is there something wrong with me? Why am I the only one who seems to be concerned about the fact that I'm working nonstop? And I clearly did not have time for that. And, going back when I first started that job, I was nursing my youngest son. So I'm having to stop every once in a while to pump and negotiating all of these things with my husband, trying to make sure the baby's taken care of. And I mean, it was just a disaster. It was a disaster. And then finally, my husband was like, you need to say something. I mean, he's like, if you feel that way, other people, I'm sure, feel that way. And so we started to talk about it. And we were all like, yeah, we're not enjoying anything about this. This is too much work. We need more people. So we had that conversation finally, and we did get more people, and things did get a little bit better for a while.
Well, and what organizations don't realize sometimes is the cost of turnover. So you have the actual cost. So let's say somebody making $150,000 a year, it could cost the organization up to 3 times their annual salary to replace them. We're talking real money. When you're replacing professionals who you've hired because of their brain and their knowledge, they're expensive to replace. But the other thing that so many times we don't take into account is the stress on the rest of the team, the absenteeism. 50% of people that call in sick, it's because of stress. And stress contributes to the 6 top causes of death in the United States. Stress makes those worse. So when you talk about going, I'm sick, I got to go to the doctor, chances are stress played a role in it. There's a lot of studies out there from primary care doctors. So normal primary care, they say 75% of those visits are all stress related.
Oh, wow. And that makes perfect sense now that I think about like my own life.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, okay, well, it's only an hour or 2 hour doctor visit. Well, who can get in and out of a doctor's office in 2 hours? You're taking time away. You're trying to shuffle. You're trying to get your kids where they need to be. It ends up being quite an endeavor to be able to get away. Somebody else has to pick up the slack. Or I just call in sick. I call in for the whole day. And then, who's taking care of that? And then you don't have the forward momentum in organizations when you have constant turnover because nobody remembers how anything was done because we've lost all of our organizational history in that sense of loyalty and pride that we have because it just feels like a revolving door. I don't matter. And so then I'm like, okay, the next person who calls me about a job, yeah, maybe I'll listen.
Absolutely. And so how do you have those conversations with these companies? Because in law firms, at least, it was always very much like, well, I did it. You'll be fine. It's a rite of passage. And that's why they end up complaining about us poor millennials. And then, oh my God, Gen Z, they're being lambasted across the country. But how do we get people out of that mindset that this is not about like revenge? When, that wonderful Maya Angelou quote, when you know better, you do better. Mm-hmm. We know better.
Yeah. Well, I think that so there's some organizations that are just never going to change and they're okay with that. They're not my ideal client. I don't want to work with them.
Right.
God love you, but let's say a little prayer for all your employees because, it is what it is. But then you have these organizations who really do want to make a difference. They want to have a community where their people really feel like they matter, their families matter. And to be able to do that, so they have to have the desire to be open to the conversation. And then you have other people who like, I know we need this. I just don't know how to do it. And so those are the easiest ones to have the conversations with because they're seeing it. They're like, I talked to had a consult last week with a large organization. And she says, we're not seeing the turnover yet, but we know that it's going to happen. If you saw the study that came out in December, 140,000+ women lost jobs in December and 16,000 men increased in the labor pool in December. So all of the job loss was for women. And a large part of it is because their moms they're trying to balance taking care of their parents and taking care of kids and doing everything at home. And they don't have enough bandwidth and resources. So the one thing that I think if we have to have a silver lining of the pandemic, I mean, I think a lot of good things have come out of the pandemic. And I know people are like, well, what do you mean? I'm a glass half full. So I like to look at the things as positive. But one of the things that has come out is that work can be done differently and still have good outcomes. So the way we used to do work is different. But the other thing that it's shined a spotlight on is that women, especially working moms or working parents, I'm sure most of your listeners are women, but working parents need different things than a 20-something with no kids. And so we look at some of these, but we have the pool table in the break room and we have snacks in here and we can do this and we do that. And do you really think a working mom cares? She's like, I want to get out at 4:00 so that I can pick my kids up at 4:30 from daycare. I mean, this is providing everybody has daycare.
Right.
Or maybe you've dispersed everybody home. I had this conversation of, we have these big, beautiful, shiny buildings that we all used to work in. You paid for people to come in and clean those buildings. Now you've moved all of your workers home. what if once a month you sent your parent, any of them, here's a certificate to get your house cleaned? Because you know what? Their office now is their home. You used to clean their office. Idea. Now they're home. So looking at different things that you could do. And maybe some people who have smaller teams, I want to do something, but what is it that I can do? Well, maybe it's, instead of food in the break room, maybe I give them a Blue Apron gift card so that's already there. Or, we've got to start thinking about things. What do people need?
Yeah.
Versus what are the luxury and wants that don't really bring any value? Right now, we're at a time where people need things. They don't need, I don't need another coffee mug. It's not going to do anything for me. But maybe if you sent me coffee,
that would be helpful.
That would mean something. A mug with my company logo, but I accompany it with coffee, and then I can have coffee with one of my colleagues via Zoom. That's probably going to mean a little bit more than, oh yeah, we sent you this swag.
Absolutely.
So
that makes a lot of sense. And I think back to my last job. That's the only thing I ever remember to talk about. But the after hours happy hour, that was not always helpful to me.
Well, and how many of those did we have to go to that we never want? It's like, oh my God, I got to go.
Yes. And you end up going and you don't want to, and you're resentful the entire time because you wanted to go home.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of the time I would just be there thinking I don't even really know these people. They don't care that I'm here, but I have to be here instead of being at home with people who actually want to be with me. It was crazy.
Well, it's funny. And not my last hospital that I went, but 2 hospitals ago, we had a zoo day. And it was where we gave passes to the zoo. And we were like, really, I hope that it's hard when you're doing something for everybody. And it was funny because the parents with little kids, they were like, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. And then the older ones who maybe they were empty nesters, they were like, we haven't been to the zoo in so long. This was so much fun. And then we had these young, 20, early 30s with no kids. They were like, oh my gosh, it was just so fun just to go to the zoo, because it's not something that people always do. And, I know the pandemic, doing and getting out is very different, but it's thinking of things that bring people joy. And even in your personal life, even if your company is not doing it for you, find those things that bring you joy. Things don't have to cost a lot. Like, when was the last time you actually packed a picnic and went to a park, put a blanket out, watched your kids play, and just sat and had a picnic lunch?
I am fairly certain that has never happened.
So I challenge you to do that in the next month. Just have a picnic.
They would love it.
They would love it. You would love it. And it doesn't have to be fancy. If like packing a picnic lunch is oh my God, I don't even want to plan it. And just go to the grocery store and grab some things, some crackers and, some oranges, because you don't have to wash it. You could still, peel the oranges and eat there. Because if you did grapes, you can't wash them. But, grab some things that are grab and go, where you just, grab some nuts, whatever it is. And your kids will be like, oh, I got the coolest mom. And then they play, and you and your husband can sit on a blanket and go, aren't our kids just adorable? Don't make time for those things. And it's those little things that really can make a difference.
Are there any tips you have for children? How can I start to teach them to value their own time and their mental health now?
So it's the same thing as adults. It's creating time for quiet. That, I think, is the biggest. And then the biggest tip that I can give to parents is teaching your kids that no emotion is right or wrong. It's okay to get angry. It's not okay to hit when we get angry. And so it's like they need to know that I can feel these emotions, but I'm not the emotions. So if we start to disconnect, like, and we say it, I catch myself, oh, you're such a good girl. Oh, that way, you're so good. No, she's Winter. She's not a good girl. What she did was good. And so we disconnect and we start to teach them that they aren't the emotion, they aren't the good, the bad. And that, like when you say, Johnny is a bad boy. No, Johnny, what you did was poor behavior. And so we have to start changing our language that we talk to ourselves and that we talk to our kids so that they don't become the thing that we're talking about.
Oh.
And then the other is, as your kids, like you'll hear your kids do it, like, oh, I should have done that, or I should have done this, or I'm no good at that. Or they'll say, I'm angry. You're angry? Really? I thought your name was Winter. And it kind of stops them. And it's like, you can have these emotions, you can have this. It's how we step back and process it. And you give them the space to be able to do that. I think that is probably the biggest self-regulator for kids.
That is huge because I already hear my little girl primarily. She's like, I'm such a good girl. I did such a good thing. And you should be so proud of me. And I was like,
but here's what you need to say.
But
I'm proud of you, but are you proud of you? If we can teach them to be proud of themselves, then they don't need the external validation of love and approval. Now, we want to give our kids that, but they're not going to be 30 trying to figure out why I have this negative self-talk and I hate myself. And so it's like when you start to change the language and you teach them to have positive talk, like, I think that's fabulous. She says, I'm a good girl. And it's like, okay, but why is that? What you did was good, or what you did got you XYZ, and to be proud of herself. And it's kind of that, you know what, I'm always going to be proud of you, but are you proud of you? You should be so proud of yourself, because then she's creating that internal dialogue of herself that she's worthy, because that is the biggest, when I work with adult clients, I would say the number one thing that they deal with is they don't think they're worthy. Yeah. So if we can start teaching them when they're little and have that positive self-talk, like we do it. I call it the shitty committee and the mean girl that we have in our heads. You think it and you're just like, oh, look in the mirror, oh, you're fat. You need this, you need that. We can rip ourselves apart. We would never talk to our kids that way. And so we need to stop doing that. And we need to stop having our kids hear that. And when you hear your kids do it, you have to stop it.
And I'll get real personal at this point. I have really been struggling with that through the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Pre-pandemic, I'm vain. Listen, I am just across the board, very vain, very concerned with what I look like. But I was not someone who wore makeup all the time. I might have been like dressed to the nines, but I wasn't wearing makeup. I was trying to just be comfortable for the most part, and starting my day with putting on makeup and spending, like I said, I don't need all that time in the morning, and spending extra time that I could have been sleeping. I didn't do that. I might put makeup on at my desk every once in a while, but, it was nothing like it is now with being on camera all the time.
Because you got to be on camera?
Yes, it is crazy. And I was talking to a girlfriend about this morning, and she's just like, I want my skin back. Like, can I just have my regular face back?
Well, and does everything have to be on Zoom?
Some days I'm like, we're not doing it.
Yeah. Like I book it out to where there's some days like, where it's like, I have no Zoom meetings, and I do it specifically because it's like, I'm not doing that. I don't have to, I can put my hair in a ponytail and, run around and do whatever. And so I think that you can, I think you have to have a balance of it. And I think sometimes we've kind of gotten over zoomed. Like, oh, that could have been a phone call. Yeah. If I've already met this person, and it is nice to have Zoom because you can read body language and this and that, but Zoom fatigue is real. And there are times where it's like, you know what? I've met with this client 3 times. I don't really need to see him. You know what? Let's do this on the phone and maybe even go for a walk and do it on the phone. And so then you're kind of moving, and then it feels like I did the phone for a reason because I got up and walked, or I went and sat outside. And you can't do that when you've got your desk and you got your camera and you got your lights, and, you know, so it's, we all lived with a phone for the longest time.
I know, right? Like, this Zoom thing is so new for me, and it's just taken over my life.
Yeah.
Gotta pull it back. But, you know, it's getting late. I'm sorry.
You're fine. I'm having so much fun.
Oh, good. You know, I really needed this conversation. I have been just stressed to the max. I mean, typically, but like more so now. I've got like issues going on, like with my kids and things that need to be done for them. And they've been home all year. And now, you know, I want to send them back to school next year. But I'm still completely freaked out about it. I'm waiting on my second shot, but my kids won't be vaccinated. But I can't keep them home forever. And I'm obsessing over it, and I'm worried. And it's just like this, like, I won't call it a death spiral, but that's kind of what it feels like. And sometimes I just can't get out of my own head. So I really like this concept of just being quiet, taking that time to be quiet, because what I think I have been doing is avoidance. Mm-hmm. I've been using this time to, I'm going to focus on lifting weights, so I don't have to think about these other things that will still be waiting for me when I finish lifting the weights.
Well, and I will tell you, some people, when you first start trying to create some quiet time, it's too much. Your head is going a million miles a minute. And so you're like, I can't, this is why people don't meditate, because they'll say, I can't turn my brain off. Of course you can't turn your brain off. Your brain is there to say, friend, folk, keep you safe. Friend, folk, keep you safe. So we're doing this all day long. Mm-hmm. And so it's got this a million things that it's flinging through. And, you know, sometimes it's just like of all these different thoughts and ideas. So if you're having a hard time with it, spend 5 minutes, and I call it do a brain dump. And you, in 1 minute, you might be like writing your grocery list. The next, it might be, these are the things I have to do. And then you're like, oh, yellow kitties. Yeah, I had, you'll just everything that comes to mind, just write it down. And once you write it down, a lot of times it's like, you don't have to obsess about it anymore. Your brain has said, address. I addressed it. I wrote it down. I can let it go.
Oh my gosh.
And so you can really just be like, okay. And then if you get into this, like, I call it the pandemic swirl of, you know, do I need a mask? Do I not? Do I vaccine? Not? Oh my gosh, what about this? Can I go here? Am I going to make people safe? What's this person going to think? And you get in it. It's like, okay, just stop, grab a piece of paper, and everything that you're thinking, just write it down. Like, not like you're going to write. I don't say journal, because when you journal, a lot of people think it has to be like a story. I just want you to grab a piece of paper and just, you know, jot it down, grab something out of the printer without even lines, so that there's no structure to it. Like, you don't even have to stay in the lines, and you just jot it all down. And then it's like, okay, take a breath. And then it's like, okay, what am I really feeling now? Because sometimes we get all up in our head. And then once you get it down on a piece of paper, it's like, take a breath and then just feel into your body. It's like, what am I feeling? What is that feeling? It may be anxiety. It may be, oh, I'm tired, or I'm a little scared. Then you can explore what that feeling is. And usually what I tell clients to do is feel that feeling. Like, maybe it's, you know what? I'm scared. Okay, then welcome it. which sounds crazy, but you just are like, okay, I'm acknowledging that I'm feeling this, and then just sit with it. A lot of times it'll just dissipate. And it's like, okay, you just needed me, like my body, my subconscious needed me to acknowledge I'm scared. But now it doesn't have to stop me.
It reminds me a lot of how I work with clients, trying to get them to open up about their emotions and what's really going on. Why are we so angry? But I never thought to do that for myself.
Well, we are much better at helping other people than we are ourselves.
Truly. Oh my gosh.
But that works really well for kids too. Like if you have your kids, you know how they have their little meltdown for whatever reason. And typically we'll say, oh, well, what's going on? Tell me, what are you feeling? They can't articulate it. Right. And so, you know what? If they're little, you give them a piece of paper and you just say, draw it, write it down. Drawing works well for adults too, but too many times we're so critical, and I'm a terrible drawer. So it'd be like, draw everything that's coming through your head. That almost feels too much. Like I have to judge it, and am I doing it right? Or this, if you are very creative, that can work for you to just draw and color and this and that. But you can just have your kids, just if they're old enough to write down what's flight of ideas it's going, or just have them draw it. And it kind of creates that space to calm down. And then it's like, okay, what are you feeling? Not like the emotion, but where do you feel it? And how does it feel? Is it a bubbly? Is it like, describe it without saying it's mad, anger, sad, whatever it is. And they just feel that feeling. And then be like, okay, we'll just sit with that. And then usually it will go away.
Now, I'll tell you, I have an adult coloring book, and I mean adult, like for adults, not an adult coloring book. But
my husband really likes it.
Hey, it's all pictures of Jason Momoa. So sometimes, my husband will come into the bedroom and he's like, oh, Lord, she's coloring Jason Momoa again. I'm like, whatever gets me through the day.
But yeah, it's that disconnect that really helps. Now, I will tell you, doing the brain dump, when people will do it and they're like, well, I'll just type it. It does not do the same thing. It's something about the movement of your hand.
Oh.
And
okay.
the portion of your brain and that versus typing it doesn't seem to give people the release that I get when I actually writing and putting it down on paper. And then you could just throw it away. I mean, you don't need to keep it or anything.
Right. That's done.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I feel like I have learned a ton, and I'm sure the listeners are going to be very, very excited.